9 signs it's time to end a toxic relationship, even with family or friends. Relationships form the foundation of our lives, offering companionship, love, and understanding. But what happens when those connections begin to weigh us down instead of lifting us up? The truth is, even the closest relationships, whether with family or friends, can turn toxic, and holding on to them out of guilt or obligation can cost us our emotional well-being. Today, on Zen Teachings Daily, we're exploring one of the most challenging yet essential topics: recognizing when a relationship has become harmful and finding the courage to let it go. These decisions are never easy, especially when they involve people we've cared about for years, but your peace of mind and emotional balance are worth protecting. In this video, we'll uncover the 9 clearest signs that it's time to walk away, even if it feels like the hardest thing to do. If you've been questioning whether a particular relationship is still serving you, stay with us. This conversation might change your perspective forever. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to Zen Teachings Daily for more insights on personal growth, inner peace, and spiritual wisdom. Let's embark on this journey together. Litty to navigate your own life. That's the silent power of manipulation. It doesn't just control your choices, it makes you believe that you're incapable of making good ones on your own. Number 1. Manipulation. A silent sabotage. Manipulation doesn't always come in harsh forms. Sometimes it feels like a soft push, like when someone repeatedly uses guilt to steer your actions. They might remind you of all they've done for you in the past, subtly implying that you owe them, even if their demands are unreasonable. For older adults, this can be especially painful when it involves close family members. A son or daughter might say, "I've sacrificed so much for you, the least you can do is trust me on this," creating a dynamic where your own needs and desires are overshadowed by their expectations. This kind of behavior is especially difficult to confront when it comes from someone you care deeply about. Perhaps it's a friend you've known for decades who always finds a way to dismiss your feelings. Or maybe it's a sibling who undermines your choices by saying they're only being honest. When manipulation happens in these relationships, it feels like a betrayal of trust, leaving you torn between loyalty and self-preservation. What makes manipulation so insidious is that it often leads to isolation. Manipulators may subtly discourage you from seeking advice or help from others, either by questioning your judgment or by making you feel guilty for relying on someone else. This can leave you feeling trapped, as though there's no one you can turn to for clarity or support. Breaking free from manipulation begins with awareness. Pay attention to the patterns. Do you feel drained or unsure of yourself after spending time with this person? Are you constantly made to feel guilty for asserting your needs? If so, it's time to reclaim your sense of self. Start by expressing your feelings clearly and firmly. A simple but powerful statement like, "When you dismiss my feelings, it makes me feel unheard," can help set boundaries. However, it's important to remember that manipulators rarely change unless they want to. If their behavior persists despite your efforts, stepping away from the relationship may be the healthiest choice. Protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of self-respect. Relationships should nurture your well-being, not erode it. Recognizing manipulation is the first step in freeing yourself from its silent, damaging grip and rediscovering your own voice and autonomy. Number 2. Lack of respect, the core issue. Respect is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Without it, even the strongest bonds can crumble, leaving behind frustration, hurt, and a lingering sense of betrayal. For older adults, Respect often holds an even deeper significance, symbolizing dignity, experience, and the recognition of a life well lived. Yet, when respect is missing in a relationship, whether with a close friend, a family member, or even a caregiver, it can feel like an erosion of your very identity. Disrespect doesn't always come in obvious forms like harsh words or blatant dismissals. Sometimes it's as subtle as being interrupted constantly or having your preferences ignored. It could be a relative who brushes off your opinions with a dismissive, "You wouldn't understand," or a friend who belittles your ideas during conversations. Over time, these seemingly small moments add up, creating an environment where you feel undervalued and unseen. For older individuals, this lack of respect can often show up in decisions about your autonomy. Perhaps someone assumes they know what's best for you without consulting you, whether it's about your health, finances, or how you spend your time. They may have good intentions, but their actions disregard your ability to make choices for yourself. This dynamic not only undermines your confidence, but also chips away at the mutual regard that should define a healthy relationship. Respect also means honoring boundaries, an essential element in maintaining emotional safety. When someone repeatedly crosses those boundaries, whether through prying into your private affairs or pushing you into decisions you're uncomfortable with, they're signaling a fundamental lack of consideration for your feelings. These violations aren't just annoying, they're damaging, as they erode trust and create emotional distance. Reclaiming respect in your relationships starts with clear communication. Express how their behavior affects you, such as, "When you interrupt me, it makes me feel unheard," or "I need you to consult me before making decisions on my behalf." A relationship built on mutual respect should welcome these conversations. However, if your concerns are dismissed or met with hostility, it's a sign that the other person may not value the relationship as much as you do. In such cases, walking away might be the most respectful choice you can make for yourself. Respect isn't optional. It's the cornerstone of any connection worth preserving. Number 3. Violation of boundaries, when lines are crossed. Boundaries are more than just rules. They are a declaration of your values, needs, and personal limits. They create a space where you feel safe, respected, and in control of your own life. Yet, in toxic relationships, boundaries are often ignored or outright trampled, leaving you feeling invaded, disrespected, and emotionally drained. For older adults, whose lives are often entwined with long-standing connections, setting and enforcing boundaries can feel like an impossible task. Boundary violations can take many forms, from subtle oversteps to blatant disregard. Perhaps it's a relative who constantly intrudes into your private matters, asking invasive questions or making unsolicited comments about your finances or health. Or maybe it's a friend who dismisses your preferences, insisting on plans or activities that make you uncomfortable. These actions might seem minor at first, but their cumulative effect can lead to feelings of powerlessness and frustration. Sometimes these violations come from a place of entitlement. A family member might believe that because they've always been close to you, they have the right to know everything about your life. Or a friend might assume that your history together gives them the freedom to push your limits. But the truth is, no relationship, no matter how long-standing or cherished, gives someone the right to ignore your boundaries. When your boundaries are crossed repeatedly, the impact can be profound. Stress and anxiety build as you constantly feel the need to defend your personal space. You may begin to doubt your own judgment, thinking, "Maybe I'm being too rigid," or "I don't want to upset them." But these compromises come at the cost of your emotional well-being as you sacrifice your comfort to maintain the relationship. Reclaiming control begins with a simple yet powerful step: clearly defining your boundaries and communicating them assertively. For instance, if someone insists on prying into sensitive matters, you might say, "I appreciate your concern, but I prefer to keep that private." If they persist, reiterate your stance firmly, and if necessary, explain the consequences of further boundary violations. Unfortunately, not everyone will respect your limits, no matter how calmly or clearly you express them. If someone continues to push past your boundaries despite your efforts, it may be time to reevaluate the relationship. Protecting your peace and well-being isn't selfish, it's an essential act of self-care. Relationships that thrive on respect will honor your boundaries, while those that don't are often not worth keeping. Number 4. Lack of support. The lonely road. Relationships are meant to be a source of strength, a haven where we find encouragement and comfort during life's challenges. But when a relationship becomes one-sided, where support is absent, it leaves a void that can feel isolating, especially for older adults. Loneliness in these moments doesn't come from being alone. It stems from being surrounded by people who don't truly stand by you when it matters most. Imagine navigating a health scare, grieving the loss of a loved one, or facing the uncertainties of aging, only to find that those closest to you are absent when you need them most. Perhaps it's a friend who brushes off your struggles, changing the subject when the conversation gets serious. Or maybe it's a family member who expects you to support them while offering nothing in return. This lack of mutual care can lead to feelings of abandonment and emotional exhaustion. The absence of support often reveals itself in subtle ways. You might notice that the person rarely checks in on you or minimizes your difficulties when you open up to them. Their focus seems to be elsewhere, on their problems, their achievements, or their needs, while your challenges go unnoticed. Over time, this imbalance can erode the foundation of trust and care that every meaningful relationship requires. For older adults, the lack of support can feel particularly heavy. Life transitions, such as retirement, health changes, or the loss of independence, often require emotional reinforcement from those around you. When this support is missing, it amplifies the sense of isolation, making even the smallest obstacles feel overwhelming. Rebuilding a sense of support in your relationships starts with acknowledging its absence. Open a dialogue with the other person, expressing your feelings honestly but without blame. For example, you might say, "I feel like I've been going through this alone, and I'd really appreciate your presence and understanding." Sometimes, people don't realize the impact of their inaction until it's brought to their attention. However, if the lack of support persists despite your efforts, it's a sign to reevaluate the relationship. Surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about your well-being is not only vital, it's your right. True relationships involve give and take, and without support, they lose their essence. You deserve connections that nourish your spirit and stand beside you, not ones that leave you to walk the road alone. Number 5. One-sided relationships. Carrying the weight alone. Every relationship should feel like a partnership, a shared space where both individuals give and receive equally. Yet, one-sided relationships can leave you feeling as though you're the only one doing the heavy lifting. Over time, this imbalance becomes exhausting, sapping your energy and sense of self-worth. For caregivers, grandparents, or anyone accustomed to putting others first, this dynamic can feel all too familiar. In a one-sided relationship, you're often the one reaching out, making plans, or offering emotional support, while the other person seems content to take without giving anything in return. Perhaps you found yourself constantly listening to their problems while they barely acknowledge your struggles. Or maybe you're the one making sacrifices, your time, your energy, your resources, only to have your efforts go unnoticed or unappreciated. This lack of reciprocity can lead to deep frustration and fatigue. Relationships thrive on mutual effort and care, but when the balance is tipped too far in one direction, it creates a sense of being undervalued and even invisible. For older adults, this can be particularly disheartening, especially if you've spent years investing in a relationship that now feels hollow. Recognizing the weight of a one-sided relationship isn't easy. You may find yourself justifying the imbalance, thinking, "That's just how they are," or "It's my responsibility to keep things going." But carrying a relationship alone is unsustainable and can drain you of the energy you need for yourself. Healthy relationships are built on shared effort, where both people feel seen, heard, and supported. If you're the only one carrying the weight, it's time to reassess. Your energy is precious, and it's worth investing in connections that lift you up rather than weigh you down. Number 6. Trust issues when the foundation crumbles. Trust is the bedrock of any meaningful relationship. It allows you to feel safe, valued, and connected. Without it, the very foundation of the relationship begins to crumble, leaving behind doubt, insecurity, and emotional distance. Trust, once broken, is difficult to repair, and its absence can make even the closest bonds feel hollow. The erosion of trust often begins with small cracks, secrets kept, promises broken, or words spoken behind your back. Over time, these cracks widen, creating a chasm that's hard to bridge. Perhaps you've confided in someone only to find that your private thoughts were shared without your consent. Or maybe a loved one consistently fails to keep their word, leaving you feeling let down and unimportant. These betrayals, no matter how small, add up, creating an emotional rift that's difficult to ignore. For older adults, trust can be even more sacred. Decades of life experience often teach the value of honesty and reliability, making its absence in a relationship all the more painful. When you cannot trust someone to respect your boundaries, honor their commitments, or simply be truthful, the connection becomes strained, if not entirely unsustainable. Rebuilding trust requires both effort and willingness from both parties. Open conversations about feelings of betrayal can help, but the other person must show genuine remorse and a commitment to change. Without these steps, the relationship will remain fragile, weighed down by unresolved tensions. Sometimes, the most loving decision you can make is to walk away. Trust isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. Relationships without it will always leave you questioning motives, doubting intentions, and feeling unsteady. You deserve relationships that make you feel secure, not ones that keep you walking on eggshells. Number 7. Chronic negativity. The cloud you don't need. Spending time with someone who constantly complains can feel like standing under a rain cloud that never lifts. Their negativity seeps into your mind, affecting your mood and outlook on life. Over time, this constant exposure can weigh heavily on your mental health, leaving you drained and even pessimistic yourself. Chronic negativity can manifest in many ways. It might be a friend who never seems to find anything good to say, endlessly pointing out flaws in every situation. Or it could be a family member who uses every conversation to vent their frustrations, never pausing to ask about your day. While we all have tough moments and need to express them, a relentless focus on the negative creates an emotional imbalance in the relationship. For older adults, chronic negativity can be particularly challenging. You may already be navigating your own stresses, health concerns, loss, or other life transitions. Adding someone else's constant complaints to your mental load can feel overwhelming, making it harder to find joy in the small moments that matter most. The effects of negativity aren't just emotional, they're physical too. Studies have shown that being around constant complainers can elevate stress levels, leading to fatigue and even impacting your overall well-being. Over time, it becomes harder to remain optimistic or motivated when someone's gloom overshadows your light. To protect your peace, it's important to set boundaries with those who bring persistent negativity into your life. Express your feelings gently but firmly, such as, "I understand you're going through a tough time, but I need us to focus on more positive topics too." If the negativity persists despite your efforts, consider limiting your exposure. You deserve relationships that uplift and inspire you, not ones that weigh you down like a never-ending storm. Letting go of that cloud might be the first step toward seeing the sun again. Number 8. Self-absorption. Being invisible. In a healthy relationship, both individuals share the stage, taking turns to listen, support, and celebrate each other. But when you're with someone who is entirely self-absorbed, it can feel like you're playing the role of a spectator in your own life. Their constant need to monopolize attention leaves little room for your voice, your experiences, or your feelings, making you feel invisible and unimportant. Self-absorbed individuals often dominate conversations, steering them back to their own stories, achievements, or problems. You may start a conversation about your health or a recent accomplishment, only for them to cut in with their own tale, turning the spotlight on themselves. Over time, this imbalance can chip away at your self-esteem, as your needs and experiences seem to hold no value in their eyes. For older adults, this dynamic can be particularly painful. You've lived a life full of wisdom and experiences, yet in a relationship with a self-centered individual, those stories may feel dismissed or overlooked. It's not just the lack of acknowledgement that hurts. It's the realization that the relationship is one-sided, with little effort made to understand or appreciate you. Navigating this type of relationship requires careful reflection. You might try gently steering the conversation to a more balanced exchange, saying something like, "I'd love to share how I've been feeling too." However, if the person remains uninterested or dismissive, it's a clear sign that their focus will never shift from themselves. Being seen and valued is a fundamental human need. Relationships that revolve around one person's ego cannot provide the mutual care and respect that you deserve. Letting go of a self-absorbed connection may feel difficult, but it opens the door to relationships where you can truly be seen and heard. Number 9. Emotional exhaustion. Signs. It's time to let go. Relationships should leave you feeling uplifted, supported, and connected. But when a relationship drains you, leaving you emotionally exhausted after every interaction, it's a clear sign that something is deeply unbalanced. Emotional exhaustion doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of constantly giving your energy to someone who offers little in return, leaving you feeling depleted and undervalued. You may notice the exhaustion creeping in slowly, manifesting as a sense of dread before seeing this person or relief when the interaction is over. Conversations might feel like an emotional tug-of-war, where you're left carrying the weight of their problems, frustrations, or demands. Over time, these interactions take a toll on your well-being, making it harder to find joy in your daily life. For older adults, emotional exhaustion can feel especially burdensome. Life should be a time for savoring connections and nurturing relationships that bring peace and fulfillment. Instead, carrying the emotional load for someone else can rob you of those precious moments, draining energy that could be spent on relationships or activities that genuinely enrich your life. Recognizing emotional exhaustion is an act of self-care. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with this person. Are you rejuvenated, or are you left feeling empty? If it's the latter, it's time to reassess whether this relationship aligns with your needs and values. Letting go is not a sign of failure. It's a courageous step toward protecting your emotional health. Walking away from draining relationships creates space for ones that inspire, energize, and uplift you. Prioritizing your own well-being isn't selfish. It's necessary for living a life of peace and fulfillment. You deserve relationships that pour into you, not ones that leave you running on empty. Taking the next step. Letting go of toxic relationships is never easy, especially when they involve people we've cared about deeply or known for much of our lives. But sometimes, stepping away is the most loving thing you can do, not only for yourself, but for the other person too. By releasing unhealthy connections, you create space for peace, growth, and relationships that truly nurture your spirit. As you reflect on the signs we've discussed today, remember that protecting your emotional well-being is not an act of selfishness. It's an acknowledgement of your worth and the value of your time and energy. Life is too precious to spend tied to relationships that drain you or hold you back. If this conversation resonated with you, know that you're not alone. Many face these difficult choices, and finding the courage to take action is the first step toward a lighter, freer future. Surround yourself with people who inspire you, encourage you, and celebrate the unique person you are. Thank you for joining us today on Zen Teachings Daily. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this message. Together, let's continue exploring paths to a more fulfilling and peaceful life. See you next time.